There's definitely a difference between men and women beyond the obvious. If you think about the two words, man and woman, if you say womankind, what do you mean? You mean women. Is that correct? When you say mankind, what do you mean? Humanity. The whole of humanity. So, womankind is just women. Mankind is humanity. When you look at the Bible was written by who?
God.
Holy men spake as they were moved by God. And we'll come back to God in a minute. But what we've got here, if you think of the names of the books in the Bible, you've got 34 of them named after men. How many named after women?
Ruth and Esther. Ruth and Esther.
2. Ruth and Esther. And do you know something? History tells us even those books were written by men. Samuel writing Ruth and Mordecai writing Esther. I mean, what is it? What is it saying? There's something about men. Men and God's choosing of men. God chose a man. If he wanted a nation, he chose Abraham. If he wanted a king, he chose David. If he wanted a watchman, he chose Daniel. If he wanted heroes, he chose Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. If he wanted a church, he chose Paul. And you can go through all of these. And you find there men. Is it any wonder that we have a different situation today? Is it any wonder why women feel that the Bible? I was speaking to a woman at a wedding. We were sitting talking at a table, and she said, "I reject the Bible. The Bible is chauvinistic. It's all about men and for men." The angels are called he. Jesus didn't go and get 12 women or a mixture. He called 12 men. Every angel is called he in the Bible. I have a personal belief, but I can't prove it. I believe that the Great Spirit, the Creator, God, Elohim, Yahweh, Jehovah, Jah, I believe, and there's no text in the Bible for it, but I believe that the Great Spirit, the Creator, transcends gender in reality. But he has chosen to present himself to the world in the male gender. Gender is meaningless to the Creator. He created gender for the purpose of man, for procreation, for all the animals, or for procreation. God doesn't need gender himself, but he's chosen to present himself in the male gender. When we consider all these things, we have to wonder, what is the purpose of man? And we look today and we see the difference. God wanted to start with a nation to represent himself to the world that had gone astray. And so he chose Abraham. And he wanted to create a church, a representative of him. And this church would be headed by priests and supported by women. But now look at the world. Look at the church today. It's headed by a thin layer of men at the top. But the church itself is run by women. I came in here this morning and I counted 13 women and 7 men. Everywhere since the beginning of COVID, since 2019, I have gone in, whenever I go into a church, I stand at the back and I count the men and the women. There's only been one exception where there has been more men than women. Every other time there's been more women than men. What has happened? Where are the men? I was listening to this good sitting sister talking about her brother Paul this morning. And he said, he had been brainwashed. He even then realized how he had hurt his sister and he apologized. She loves him and he loves her. But he, you will correct me if I'm wrong, he has a perception about us, the church.
Deceived.
But his dear sister was so emotional this morning about it because she loves her brother. But something is happening. And it started from the very beginning. If you think about it in the beginning, where is it? I mean, the Garden of Eden. I mean, you know, some idea we have this perception. It's like our back garden, you've got a shed over there and the buckets and spades and everything. When you look at the actual rivers that pass through that area, this is huge. It's a country, northeast Africa. You've got the Rift Valley where these 4 rivers pass through. This was a huge place. And Satan, the enemy, cast down to the earth, become an expert in how to divide, waiting for a moment when Adam is over there. Genesis chapter 3. Yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat. He waits for that moment. He asks a question. And from that moment, it's interesting that Satan targeted Eve, but he was aiming at Adam. Because when did the fall happen? Did it happen when Eve ate or when Adam ate?
Adam. When Adam ate.
Right. Now, are we saying then that men are better than women? Who is physically stronger, the man or the woman?
In my house.
The man is physically stronger. Generally, listen to this now. I love this. But what about this then? Who is mentally strong? In terms of pain, do you know that the Incredible Hulk was based on the story of a woman? There was a car crash. She's driving with her son. The car turns over. She's thrown out. Catches flames. The little woman went over and something clicked inside of her brain and she ripped that door open and she rescued her son. Women give birth to children.
Praise the Lord.
If there were men, if men gave birth, they said there'd be only one child in the world today.
But we don't know.
Although I will say this in defense of men, the pain that women have to give birth, you kick a man between the legs, that pain, no man wants that again. You give woman 6 months after the pain of childbirth, she wants another one. They're stronger than us. Up here, the right side of the brain, emotions, relationships, all these type of things. The left side of the brain, logic, we say that the right side is female, the left side is male. But we both got a little bit of each. Men have testosterone, women have estrogen, but we both have some of it. And as Patrick was talking about this morning, this merger of the difference between men and women in the LGBTQI plus community is coming into the church now, and it's very difficult because if you say anything today, you dare say anything, you're a hater. This woman called Jane Ozane, Christian LGBT, she's created a term called not hate speech, but hate prayer. So someone comes in, we had this in one of our churches in Wolverhampton during the Sabbath school. Chap comes in, dressed, he's got an Alice band, he's got a dress on, he's got stilettos. He comes and he sits down in the church. They're doing Sabbath school. And And he puts his hand up. I noticed, I wanted to go to the loo. I saw some of you people going to the loo. Who puts their hand up to go to the loo? So he puts his hand up in the Sabbath school.
Excuse me, I want to go to the toilet. Go to the toilets.
Suddenly there's a disruption. You send him to the mirror. You can't send him to the mirror toilet because he's a woman. Where's that a woman? He's dressed in that dress. He can't go in the man toilet. Well, send him to the disabled toilet. Well, no, he's not disabled. And there was absolute panic. We've become afraid. We don't want to say anything because we don't want to upset. It's interesting, isn't it, that Jesus, we love, he's been painted over the years, gentle Jesus, meek and mild. You know the term. But in Matthew chapter 10, there are 2 verses there. Verse 16, Jesus says, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore be ye what? Wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Meaning you've got to be subtle. You've got to know what to say. You've got to know when to be quiet. You've got to know when to speak. What the gay community, I've written a book called After the Ball. This book is, the book is smaller than this. It's about this size. You put those 2 together. The book is about the overhauling of heterosexual society by the gay community. The book costs, I went on Amazon, £300. I went on eBay, £200, £95 at the cheapest. What's that telling you? That's telling you that book isn't meant for ordinary society. My cousin Olsen, he knows a thing or two. He's pretty clever. He managed to get 2 copies for 25 quid each. So he's boasted to me about it in London and everything. Stop boasting and give me one. And so he gave me one. And I'm reading this book, and what they understand is that what they're saying in there is stop running around, on these gay parades. This book was written in the 80s. But what you do, you present yourselves as victims. And if you present yourselves as victims, learn from the civil rights movement years ago, in the 1960s. You present yourselves as victims, you win over the heterosexual community. The gay community loved it when the far right in America, in Texas and other places came out with their posters, God hates faggots, you gonna burn in hellfire. They loved that because it made those Christians seem stupid and attackers, and it won over the heterosexual community in sympathy and protection. But that verse in Matthew chapter 10 and verse 16, wise as serpents, harmless as doves. But it's interesting, because that verse is so wise, we as a church have tried to hide behind it. We love that verse, put that verse here, because it gives us an opportunity to say nothing sometimes. But Jesus doesn't let us get away with it. Because in verse 34, Jesus says something that we don't want to hear. I send you forth, that's the one we've had as sheep in the presence of wolves, but in verse 34 it says, think not that I have come to bring peace, but a sword. I have come to divide families, households. And what is this sword that Jesus has used? I'm not coming to bring peace. I'm coming to bring division. It's the sword of truth. So we've got, what Jesus is saying, we've got to make a balance. We've got to know when to keep quiet, when to be subtle, and when to speak out. But what we've done, we like the idea of shh, be quiet, and we've hidden behind that. Satan himself has Christians started to be persecuted, and they were thrown to the lions and burnt at the stake, and all sorts of things, and their blood became a seed. What happened? Because they were persecuted like this, fat loads of people came in the church, and Satan's threat, what have I done? He was his own enemy, his own worst enemy. The more he killed, the more they came in. So what he has understood today, you look in Revelation chapter 12 and verse 17, it says, and the dragon, which we know is Satan, he was angry with the woman, and he went to make war with the remnant of her seed, who kept the commandments of God and had the testimony of Jesus Christ. What's the testimony of Jesus Christ? Revelation chapter 19 and verse 10, it tells you the testimony of Jesus Christ is the spirit of prophecy. Satan has understood. Infiltrate. Change the laws. Make things very, very subtle. And so, what you also need to do is target the men in the church. Because if the men are out, the church becomes weakened. It becomes weakened in a very subtle way. Now this is it's difficult to speak about, because if you don't say it carefully, you will appear to be putting down the women. But that is not so. Men and women have different brains. They operate differently. They are not the same. Some young men, for some reason, they start leaving the church. There's reasons. Satan's got reasons for black men, reasons for white men, young men leaving the church. I'm in a group called the atheist group, right? Now here's the thing, this atheist group, all of the men in this group are sons of Seventh-day Adventist pastors. And they are all atheists. I knew them when they were in church. And they mock God, they call God Father Christmas. They say you're following a thing that was created by man. So you've got those. Then you've got other types. You've got black guys who leave church when they become old enough, they go over to Islam. Because there they feel, it doesn't mess about, it's just straight. I think when I came here last time, I showed you, I've got a Bible at home. This is called the King James Bible. The one I got is called the Queen James Bible. It's got rainbows on and everything. And what it does, it deals with all those verses in the Bible that speak about homosexuality, like in Romans and everything in Leviticus, that are quite straightforward. It ameliorates them. When it says man shall not lie with man or woman with woman, it says, oh no, it doesn't mean that. What it means is you should only have one partner. All those sort of things. And young men have seen this and they say, the church is compromised. And I don't want that. The church has become weak. I was at a thing in Wolverhampton, at the Heritage Centre, earlier this year. And there were these black men in purple t-shirts. And they were called the Hebrew Israelites, who's got from America. And one of them came up to me and said, hey, I know you. He said, you and Patrick and Carlton, years ago, I used to go to the church when I was little, and I see you guys used to do talks and everything. You need to understand you're wrong, you made a mistake. And you see how the Hebrew Israelites work. What he did, he called over another one. Come over here. Okay, read it. Turn to Romans so. Read it. And the guy reads it. Read it again. Read it again. So I'm standing there like this. And so he's doing this the whole time to me, and it was exactly the same as what I saw I looked at a video about Hebrew Israelites in America. This is where they learn this technique from and everything. Really impound you. And I remember in the one in America, it said, the guy was on the street there, and he said, you white people, the gospel isn't for you. It ain't for you. And I thought to myself, my goodness, what's happening here? You're seeing very subtly the same thing. Divide and rule. divide, if you can divide the church along race lines, lines of race, if you can divide the home, if you can divide Satan doesn't care how he divides. But one thing he knows is that if he somehow causes the men to leave or no longer want to attend, then what happens? By default, the church then begins to change. You'll see, doilies on the dinner table, flowers and things like this. And so then the other men who might be invited to church, what is their perception? They begin to say the church is for women and children and old men who are frightened of hellfire, who've come back to church because they want to go to heaven when they die. I don't want this. And so then what happens? It becomes difficult. Let me think. The language of the songs and everything, many things begin to change. Look at this. Jesus, how I love you. Put your strong and loving arms around me. If you notice, the songs have changed. Years ago, this was about a battle. Armed Christian soldiers. We are marching to Zion. Dare to be a Daniel. This is a battle between good and evil. Jesus, put your strong and loving arms around me. I feel so strong when you're... Look, let's have a look at this. You can't. Can you come? You can't move, Carlton, can you? Brother, next to you. Okay, come. I call you because you're one of these sad guys who at your age is still running and doing athletics and fit when you should be doing the garden and sitting down watching telly. Look at this. Stand here. Can I talk from here? Does it affect the microphones? Okay, look at this now. This is what has happened. Here's this guy, he's an athletic guy. Right, now I want you to imagine, we don't know each other. And we've been invited by someone else, by Chris, to come to church. And we just happen to be sitting next to each other in the church. Now I want to show you something that has happened very, very subtly. Would you come for a moment, please? Hi, Sandra. Yes, hands are very, what we want to do here. Right now, if it's a man and a woman, a boyfriend and a girlfriend, a man and a wife, this is what happens naturally. When we hold hands, the man automatically covers the like that. You've done it naturally. So the man puts his hand over the front. The woman automatically puts her hand. You watch the next time you hold your hands. You see that thing. That's what happens. The man covers. The woman puts her hand like that. This is a natural thing that happens. Thank you very much, Sandra. Now, the awkward part. You have invited Carlton and you have invited Adrian to the church. We don't know each other. We've never met. We happen to be sitting next to each other. So a sister comes up to the front there and says, okay, can we all get up and we want to pray? Can we hold hands even along the aisles in the gaps? And so, immediately we've got a problem. Because what is it saying now? Which of us is going to be the woman? And which of us is going to be the man? It's awkward. And we ain't looking at each other like that. We've both gone like that. And then he'll never give up. I know you will. And so then the other things that happen. When we hug each other, man and woman hug. When a man hugs, we go like this. I'm not there. I'm not there. And so we make sure we've got something between us, our hands, like that. It's kind of awkward. And so, say he's invited me to do running, I've invited him to do weights, we've been in the gym together and everything. And then afterwards, based on the songs that are not in the Advent hymnal, but these songs, there's thousands of them written up there. And I say it online, you know something, Carlton? I appreciate our friendship. I think that it is so gentle. And the fragrance of your love and your see already, put your strong and warm arms. Do you understand? It's awkward. Thank you very much. Thank you. If anyone records this, we'll just deny it.
Thank you.
And so when you've got teenage men in their late teens or early 20s, and they're having to face this sort of thing, what you begin to find, bit by bit, they withdraw. So you've got that going on. You've got a thing that we didn't have in our day when we grew up. We are the first generation who have lived through the change. It was around 1992 or something. The change, the internet came and all of this kind of stuff. Do you remember the days when you used to have to take a 2p piece and go across the road to phone and listen to music or your phone on your landline? But now everything is there. Social media is so powerful. Young men, they ain't interested. In church, where you do, the things that are done in church are things that are right brain. Teaching, singing, public speaking. All of these are things that women are generally better at than men because they are right brain-sided emphasis. And so you see young men in church here during the song service standing with their hands in their pockets. You find even women singing a lot. But we've lived through the change. We knew what it was like before. We know what it's like now. Social media is so powerful. And so young men will say, well, there's other things I want to do on Saturday. I don't want to come to church. I want to be with my friends. I want to play football. All of these things happen. And they sing, well, you ain't saying anything. I did a talk about this one time. And I ran a number of what they call roadmen, people out there. And I said, why don't you come to church? And there's the regular one, which, everyone says, oh, the church is full of hypocrites. But that's, that's very common. But it's, the other one, it said, oh, you people at church, you elders in church, you're pillars in your church and everything, but you're invisible in the community. You ain't saying anything. And this is what they were saying. Some very uncomfortable things. And then you've got, the black young men. Oh, look at you, you created, you got a white Jesus and everything. And Jesus didn't come from England, he came from the Middle East. He had darker skin, slightly darker skin. You can find it in the book of Revelation. It's there. You can find it in Daniel, and hair like wool and skin like burnished bronze. And you've whitened him because of the colonialism. This book was made by the white man to enslave the minds of the black man. And you don't even know that. This is what happens. Satan will try to divide. And so then we find that you've got churches that are in certain demographics that are just black or just white or just Asian. And they don't even represent the demographic in the area, but because people have run there because they feel comfortable with people like themselves. What can we say to them when we try to say, oh, God loves everybody. God loves the flower garden that's got all different flowers in. Well, what about your church? What about you? And so we find that the men begin to leave. And then the church, by default, becomes predominantly female. And so then new men won't want to come. And I've seen churches where a man comes for a couple of weeks, he sits in, he's like, no, not for me, he's gone. And we don't even notice this. Something was said earlier about the water. And about stop taking the water to the sea and start to take it to the land. But Jesus said something on a similar line. He said, I shall make you what? Fishers of men. In order to catch fish, you have to know what fish eat. It's no good putting a lamb chop on the end of a fishing line and throwing it in the water. Even worse, a fried fish. You've got to know what fish eat. You've got to put it on the line, you put that in and you hide it in there on the hook, and you throw that in, and then when they take the bait, you've got to reel them in. Using opportunities, being creative. You look how Jesus, when they brought that woman, caught, they say caught in it. How can you catch someone in adultery? I mean, how does that work? What, you knock on the front door and go in and run up to the bedroom? They set this woman up. And they brought her as a trap to Jesus. But Jesus kneels down in the sand. This is an opportunity. He doesn't say anything. He writes. The Bible doesn't even tell us what he was writing. But it says that one by one, they began to move away. Why were they moving away? Because he was writing about themselves, and they felt convicted and humiliated, and they went. And then he said to the woman, where are thine accusers? And she said, nowhere, Lord. And neither do I accuse you. Go and sin no more. He used the opportunity. He could have said, yes, the law says she should have been stoned. But Jesus was subtle. He understood in this situation, this was a time to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But that time when he's actually making this whip out of 3 cords and everything, and he goes into the temple, do you think he was using that cord to whip the tables? He was taking the tables and turning them over and whipping people, whipping the men. He wasn't joking. There's a time for everything, and we've got to know what the right time is to be in a certain way. I call you young men because you are strong. Do you know the most powerful verse that God used in the Bible to speak about his love? After the one in John 3:16, for God so loved the world. The other one is Isaiah 49 and verse 15. What's it say there? God likens his love. He says, can a woman giving suck to the baby at the breast, can he forget her son? And he says, she may forget, but I will never forget you. This is a powerful love. We're called watchmen. You know, it's interesting, isn't it? The words have changed over the years. What did we have? The leader of a company, he was called the chairman. But now it's got to be what?
Director, chairperson.
Chairperson. You got, what else? You got police. They used to be called policemen. What do we call them now? Police officers. And the it was always the headmaster. And then really a headmistress. But now what's it called?
Head teacher.
The head teacher. She's got to smooth everything out like this sort of thing. And the society is changing like that. It's becoming very, very woke. And the churches are beginning to be afraid to say anything because the church is a charity and it don't want to lose its charitable status and everything. So what Satan has realized now, don't throw them to the lions, don't burn them at the stake. Infiltrate, change society, and then the church will become scared to say anything about anything. And so the church then becomes irrelevant, and the young men will say, well, this ain't saying anything. But I write to you because you are strong. Young men out there, what do they do out there? Some young men do some good stuff. But what Satan wants is when you go out there to go into the gutter. As I wind up here, I just want to tell you this. My Bible here, this Bible is so precious to me. This one. I went into Morrison's on the 11th of July to get something for my wife. It's a Tuesday. And I parked there and I went into Morrison's. It took me about 6 or 10 minutes to go in and pay for something and come out. Came out, my hands full like this. Car's gone. You know that thing where you feel a bit giddy at them? I mean, where can I park it? And I remember where I parked it, because I went, for some reason, I parked it just next to a car that was an identical model as mine. And I parked it there, and all I could see was the one that was there that wasn't mine. It was a different colour. And then a panic rose inside of me and everything. I went back in the shop, and I told them, I think my car's been stolen. And then I rang Verona and everything, and you know, the woman came out and walked with me around. Did you park it here? And I said, no, I parked it there. I know, I remember the part of the issue was gone. So you need to stand there. I rang the police then, and she said, you come back in the shop and we'll look at the screens. You need to stand over here because you can't look at the screens. So her and the security guard looked at the screens, and they saw a car being driven out of the car park at Morrison's. And it was my car, and you know, the police, the West Midlands police were on it and everything. And what happened in 24 hours? Where do you think the car was? It was in Kent. It was in Kent, heading for the docks. They found it and they arrested a guy. It was heading for Romania. Still to order and everything. And then eventually, you know, going through the insurance, going through the garages and the recovery centre and all the rest of it, came back up, and then they put it in Warsaw in some car place there. And then I had a call this week to say they've decided it's a total loss. And I went down to see the car and everything, you know, I couldn't believe it. And there was the car, and there was 2 bullet holes in the window. And also, I mean, what had happened, the council then came to, we were then put under, the council we were in trouble with the council because the council said, you've been fly tipping and you've been seen fly tipping by someone, and they put the reg and they've described the car. I said, how could you be fly tipping? The car's been stolen. And it turned out that what they'd seen was a man get out of the car, take all the stuff out of my boot, and just fling it into the bushes. And so they reported it to the council. And then through that, I think I had a receipt in there, it came back to me. And so, the thing, you know, the whole thing is gone, but guess what? When I went down to see the car, there was one thing in there, they'd taken all the stuff that was in there. I had a booster for charging cars, and all kinds of things gone. The one thing that was on the back seat where I left it.
Wow. Praise the Lord.
What is that?
Very good.
What is that? I find it incredible that this becomes even more important than the material stuff that you got and all the rest of it in the car and everything. My Bible was there. He hadn't touched it and everything. And maybe he had. I hope he looked at it or something. But what I'm saying to you is this. That through all the things that you go through, all the stuff that you go through, this stands firm. And this will not change. And what we have got to do, we have to take that very uncomfortable mirror and hold it up in front of ourselves and look at ourselves so that we can begin to see what is it that we need to do. And we need to ask God in order to bring the men and hold the men. Because if we don't do that, if we just come each week and sing lovely songs and slap each other on the back and pat each other and then go home, it's just going to keep happening. But the thing is, we're told that the church will seem as if it's about to fall. But it's not going to fall. It's going to be powerful. It's going to finish the work. And we're told at the very end, which was mentioned this morning, the church becomes the bride of Christ. This thing is victorious. But what we must remember, my final thought to you this morning, this lovely building that you've got here, this is not the church. You are the church. God said, do not forget the assembling of to go out to be fishers of men, to go out to warn, to go out to show love, the kindness that you show, simple acts and everything. But also, we've got to think about when men come, how are we going to win them and how are we going to keep them? And that means sometimes we have to start dealing with, or talking about, or dealing with difficult subjects. And then the men will perceive that the church is robust. It's not just airy-fairy. We ain't into the general Jesus week and mild. I was at a church and I was talking about Jesus going in the temple and whipping the place. I must say this. And I got asked a few weeks later to apologise because I used Jesus and violence in the same sentence. For crying out loud. The most violent day the world will ever see is the return of Christ.
That's right.
And I felt times I wanted to leave the church. I'm doing a sermon one time. I'm speaking there and I'm talking about demon possession and Jesus coming down the mountain and they bring the man who's demon possessed. And as I'm reading this thing, I'm looking down and I see a little light on the left side of me. Just probably about a little bit, where Sandra is, the light there. But I didn't look up, and this light got bigger and bigger and bigger. And something at the last moment, as I'm reading, made me just go like that. I just went like that. And this glass bottle with oil in came whoosh, bam, against the wall. And I heard a voice there, catch that now. And so someone had thrown a glass bottle up there. And I'm thinking, yeah, what's the point? What's the point in coming here? You know, how I feel now, you know, we do prison ministries. And we're going up and telling the prisoners about Jesus. I've got to fight inside of me now how I feel about prisoners and lawbreakers. Go into prison, and some of you in there, you steal cars. I'm going to come and tell you Jesus loves you. Look what you've done to me. To those who despitefully use you. When Jesus was on the cross, what did he say? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But that is just one half of the bargain. God couldn't forgive them until they acknowledge what they've done. And so the thief on the cross, at the last moment, Father, he turned to Jesus and said, Lord, remember me in your kingdom. And he had just been mocking Jesus. Remember me in your kingdom. And Jesus says, I tell you this, you shall be with me in paradise. If we can do this, how could Jesus do this? He done this because self was not an issue. Sin has the word I in the middle of it. Pride has the word I in the middle of it. When we kill the ego, it gives us a freedom. Because we don't care about us in that sense. We care about other people. But what Satan wants to do is, you're more important. Come down from the cross. You have the power. Don't let these people do this. Look after yourself. If you eat, you shall not share. God says we've got to think about others. And for me, the most wonderful thing will be for Jesus to say, as you did to the others, you've done to me, come into my kingdom. Let that be our experience.